Mister, wait! These are for you!
I can't right now, I'm late.
Please, will you be my mommy's Valentine?
I'd love to. Where's your mother?
She's in the hospital.
Rain fell steadily over the city, turning streets into glistening mirrors. A little girl, no more than 5, clutched a tiny bouquet of red roses, her dress soaked and her shoes leaving soft prints on the wet pavement. She paused in front of the towering glass doors of a restaurant she had never seen before. The light inside spilled like warmth from another world, a world she had only heard of in whispers. She took a deep breath. Her mother's face flashed in her mind, pale, fragile, smiling weakly despite the machines beeping steadily beside her. "Mama needs help," she whispered. "I can do this." The doors were heavy, but she pushed, stepping into a room that smelled of polished floors and expensive perfume. Heads turned. People paused mid-conversation. Who was this child? She didn't belong here. She held her roses tightly, her small hands trembling, but her eyes were fixed on one table. There he sat, a man alone, his suit perfect, his presence commanding yet distant. He didn't look up at first. But then, something about the little girl stopped him. She walked toward him slowly, every tap of her shoes on the marble echoing like a heartbeat. "Sir," she said, her voice small but steady, "will you be my mother's vow?" He blinked, unable to speak. 3 roses in trembling hands. A child asking for the impossible. And in that instant, something inside him shifted. A life of wealth and control had never prepared him for this. Before we continue, I want to welcome you to the channel. Thank you for being here. I want to know, where in the world are you watching from today? Comment below and let me know as we follow this unforgettable story of courage, love, and hope. Zara's tiny hands shook as she held the last of her coins, rattling them gently in the palm of her hand. Each one felt heavier than it was, like it carried the weight of her mother's life. The little piggy bank she had saved for months lay empty on the floor, its painted cat eyes staring at her as if asking, "Is this enough?" She counted again, murmuring under her breath. 1, 2, 3, please, let this be enough. The crumpled notes she had tucked carefully into her small purse seemed fragile now, like the life they were meant to save. She zipped the purse, holding it close to her chest, feeling the reassuring press of paper and coins against her heart. "Mama is very sick," she whispered to herself, pressing a hand to the photograph on her bedside table. Her mother, Amora, lay sleeping beneath the thin blanket, machines beeping softly beside her. Zara's eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. "Mama smiled at me once," she remembered, weakly, bravely. "I will bring her hope." The red dress she had chosen for this impossible task felt heavy and bright on her small frame. Mama had said, "Look like you respect yourself, Zara, even when you ask for help." And so she did, smoothing the fabric over her shoulders, adjusting the hem, practicing the serious, brave expression she thought a girl asking for a miracle should wear. Outside, the rain drummed a relentless rhythm against the cracked window. Zara took a deep breath and pressed her forehead gently against the glass, imagining the warm lights of the restaurant across the street. It was a world so far from her own, gleaming tables, crystal chandeliers, people laughing without worry. But somewhere inside that light, she knew, sat the man who could save her mother. She whispered to the roses she clutched tightly, her small fingers brushing the petals. "Please, don't let me fail. Mama needs you." And with that, she stepped into the rain, her little shoes tapping a soft, determined march toward the life she was about to change forever. The rain-slicked street reflected the golden glow of the Ivory Pearl, an exclusive restaurant Zara had only dared to imagine in dreams. Cars purred past, their polished bodies glinting like jewels in the wet night, but Zara's eyes were fixed on the glass doors ahead. Her small hand trembled as she pushed against the heavy metal, and for a heartbeat, the door refused to move. She pressed harder, her little heart hammering, until it gave way with a soft whoosh. Inside, the air was warm, carrying the faint scent of roses, wine, and polished wood. Crystal chandeliers scattered light across the marble floor, making the space shimmer as if the room itself had been sprinkled with magic. People sat at their tables, laughing, speaking in tones that felt foreign, untouched by worry. Zara's small frame seemed swallowed by the vastness, her 3 roses trembling against her chest. Heads turned. Some frowned, others whispered, but no one stepped forward. A child alone in such a place was a puzzle, a question no one knew how to answer. Zara ignored them all. She could hear the soft beeping of her mother's hospital monitors echoing in her mind, see Mama's pale smile and the frail strength in her hands. She had a mission, and she would not be afraid. Her gaze swept across the room, scanning each table with the careful precision of a soldier searching for a target. Couples leaned close, laughing. Men checked their phones, women sipped wine. None of them looked like the kind of man who could be her mother's vow. Then she saw him. At a prime table by the window, alone, sat a man in a suit so perfectly tailored it could have been painted onto him. His glass of red wine caught the light, untouched, his eyes fixed somewhere far away, heavy with something no one else in the room could see. That was him. Zara's breath caught. The little girl swallowed the lump in her throat, straightened her tiny shoulders, and took a step forward. One step, then another. Each tap of her shoes against the marble floor was a tiny drumbeat of courage. The room seemed to hush around her, the noise fading into an almost sacred silence. Finally, she reached his table. She lifted the roses with trembling hands, her voice soft but clear. "So, will you be my mama's vow?" The man looked up, startled, confusion knitting his brow. He opened his mouth, but words failed him. The child's eyes, wide and unwavering, held a weight he could not ignore. Time slowed. The restaurant faded. Only Zara stood there, offering hope like a fragile gift. The man stared at her, frozen, as if the room itself had dissolved. His fingers drummed against the polished surface of the table, a silent battle playing across his jawline. Zara's small hand tightened around the stems of the roses, her knuckles white. I don't understand," he finally said, his voice low, edged with incredulity. He leaned back, as if trying to put distance between himself and the tiny figure who had dared to invade his world. "Your mother, she's dying?" Zara's lips trembled, and a tear slipped down her cheek. "Yes, she doesn't have much time. She wanted a Valentine." "Please," her voice broke, but her gaze held him, pleading, fierce, impossible to ignore. The man's eyes softened for the first time, the hard steel around him cracking just slightly. He looked past her, as if seeing her mother, her love, her desperation. Memories flickered, moments he'd forgotten, faces he'd lost, the fleeting things that made life human. And suddenly, he felt it, the unbearable pull of responsibility, of empathy, of something bigger than himself. He opened his mouth again, hesitated. The waiter's footsteps echoed behind him, but he barely noticed. Around them, the world went on, clinking glasses, low conversations, but to him, time had stopped. I suppose I could try," he said finally, a reluctant softness threading through his words. He rose from his chair, straightened his jacket, and for the first time, he truly saw Zara, not just a child, but a messenger of hope, fragile and insistent. Zara's eyes lit up. A small, shaky smile broke across her face. "Really? You'll do it?" "Yes," he said, his voice steadier now. "I'll do it." But as he spoke, a shadow passed across his expression, a hint of doubt and fear he could not mask. Could he really step into this? Could he risk himself for someone he barely knew? The camera, or the listener's imagination, lingered on his face, a billionaire used to controlling everything, now facing the unpredictable chaos of compassion. And in that moment, the first domino of change began to fall. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the window panes, as if the city itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Kola stared at Zara, the weight of her words pressing down on him like the storm outside. "Your mother dying," he repeated, though it sounded more like a question to himself than to her. The roses trembled slightly in her tiny hands, petals brushing against his polished suit. "She's very sick," Zara said softly, stepping closer despite the enormity of the room around her. "She needs help, please, be her Valentine, her vow." Her voice cracked, but the courage in her eyes shone brighter than the chandeliers above. Kola swallowed hard. His life had been one of control, of wealth, of power, of decisions that never trembled. But this was different. This was a life, fragile and fleeting, placed entirely in his hands by a 5-year-old girl who believed in him. He took a deep breath, and for a moment, the restaurant fell away. He could see the hospital, the beeping machines, the frail hand of a mother reaching for hope. He could see the city's dark alleys, the nights he had spent alone, the emptiness he had filled with money and deals. And he saw himself, standing powerless against what truly mattered. I will help her, he said finally, his voice quiet but resolute. I will be her vow. Zara's eyes widened. Really? She whispered, her voice barely audible. Yes, Kola replied, a tight line of determination firming his jaw. I'll do whatever it takes. No one will turn her away. No one will make her feel small. Not now. Not ever. As he spoke, the waiter's eyes flicked nervously between them, the other patrons turning subtly to see the small scene unfolding. Whispers began, soft at first, then louder. A little girl had challenged a billionaire, and he had chosen to step into her world against everything society expected. And then, a new realization struck Kola. He had been wealthy, yes, but never truly alive. The first time he had felt it, years ago, was because of a stranger's kindness, a woman who had seen him when no one else did. Could it be that the very hand he was reaching out now was being guided by a circle he had not yet understood? Kola's eyes darkened for a fraction of a second. A memory, sharper than any deal or boardroom victory, flashed, a grey night, a cup of tea in someone else's hand, a word of hope whispered into his despair. The past and present collided, and he realized the truth, saving Zara's mother was not charity. It was destiny. Outside, the rain intensified, sliding down the glass in long, blurred streams. Inside, Kola bent down, gently lifting Zara into his arms. She clutched the roses tightly, her tiny face pressed to his chest. He whispered softly, "Hold on tight. We're going to bring her back." And at that moment, the world paused, holding its breath, as the first decisive act of love, impossible, reckless, transformative, was set into motion. The hospital hallways smelled of antiseptic and quiet despair. Kola's polished shoes echoed against the linoleum floor, each step a drumbeat of urgency. Zara clung to his hand, small fingers pressing into his palm like lifelines. Nurses bustled past, eyes flicking with curiosity at the unlikely pair, the billionaire in his tailored suit, a little girl holding roses that seemed impossibly fragile. In the room ahead, Zara's mother lay in a narrow bed, her chest rising shallowly with every labored breath. Tubes ran like veins of glass and plastic, machines humming a relentless rhythm of life and death. Zara's eyes brimmed with tears as she whispered, "Mommy, I brought him, he's here." Kola knelt beside the bed, his heart hammering. He reached out, gently grasping the frail hand of the woman who had never met him, yet whose life now rested in his hands. "I'm here," he said softly. "And I promise, I won't let anything happen." A flicker of color returned to her cheeks as her eyes fluttered open. She gazed at Kola with confusion, then recognition, then a fragile hope. "Who?" she croaked, voice barely audible. "She's your daughter," Kola said, glancing at Zara with a reassuring smile. "And she asked me to be her Valentine. I'm here because of her." The mother's lips quivered, a tear escaping despite her frailty. Why would you?" Kola paused, letting the weight of the moment settle. "Because love is bigger than wealth. It's bigger than fear. And today, it's bigger than anything that could ever keep her from you." Zara hugged her mother's arm, and Kola stayed close, feeling the tension, the fear, and the miracle of a heartbeat returning to its rhythm. Machines beeped, slow and steady now, the room filling with a fragile, golden light that seemed to seep from the walls themselves. Then, a sudden alert from the monitor, a momentary spike, the pulse dropping dangerously low. Kola's hand tightened on Zara's, his eyes darting between the monitors and her mother's face. Every second stretched into an eternity. The staff moved quickly, but Kola stayed rooted, whispering encouragements to Zara, grounding her in courage. And in that long, suspense-filled moment, the impossible happened. Her breathing stabilized. The color returned. Her eyes opened fully, clear and bright, and a soft, trembling smile broke across her face. Zara let out a small sob of relief, burying her face into her mother's chest. Kola exhaled, feeling a weight lift from him that he hadn't realized he'd been carrying for decades. He realized something profound. He had not just saved a life today. He had witnessed the undeniable power of hope, courage, and love, and it had changed him forever. Outside the window, the rain had stopped. The first rays of dawn broke through the clouds, casting a golden shimmer across the hospital room. Kola, Zara, and her mother shared a moment of silence, a perfect, fragile eternity suspended in time. The sun poured through the hospital windows, warm and golden, chasing away the shadows of the night. Kola sat quietly in the chair beside the bed, Zara nestled against her mother, a small hand gripping his like an anchor. The machines now hummed steadily, almost in rhythm with the soft laughter that filled the room. Zara's mother looked at Kola with eyes that shimmered, a mixture of gratitude, disbelief, and awe. I can't believe, her voice broke, tears spilling freely now, but not from pain. These were tears of relief, of wonder, of life reclaimed. Kola shook his head gently, smiling. You don't need to believe. You just need to live. That's enough. Zara's tiny arms wrapped around Kola's neck. Thank you for being my Valentine, she whispered, her voice trembling but strong. Kola knelt, hugging her carefully, feeling a sense of completeness he had never known. In that moment, he realized that all the boardrooms, all the yachts, all the gold in the world meant nothing compared to this, the unspoken, unbreakable bond between a child and her mother, and the courage it took to believe in miracles. Outside, the city buzzed with life, oblivious to the miracle inside that quiet hospital room. Yet inside, something fundamental had shifted. Kola's heart felt lighter, fuller. He had gone in as a stranger, a man of immense wealth but solitary existence, and emerged as a part of a story far bigger than himself. Zara's mother reached out, her hand trembling, and touched Kola's cheek softly. You saved her. And me. Kola's voice was low, gentle, almost reverent. No. You saved each other. I just helped. The trio shared a long, lingering moment, the kind that wraps around your chest and refuses to let go. Outside the window, the first birds of morning chirped, as if heralding a new beginning. Zara looked up at Kola with a smile that could light the darkest night. And now, Kola said, standing slowly, we live. Together. One day at a time. The camera would pull back, showing the three of them framed by the golden sunlight, a tableau of hope, love, and resilience. The storm had passed, the night was over, and the world was quietly, beautifully alive once again. As they stepped out of the hospital room into the first true day of spring, the story didn't just end, it transformed. And the memory of courage, love, and the unlikeliest of miracles would echo forever.